Hey, algebra students. In this video, we're going to learn to factor trinomials ax squared plus bx plus c. You've done this in the past where a was 1. In this assignment, a will be something other than 1. We're going to learn two methods to do this. Let's start with grouping. Here are the steps to do this with grouping. We're going to start by multiplying a and c. That's like the first coefficient and the last term. We're going to find the factors of a times c, and we're going to be looking for one that adds together to equal b. Then we're going to split this out as 4 terms. We're going to separate that middle term into the factors we found in b. Then we can do factor by grouping. We're going to group the first 2 terms together and the last term. 2. We're going to factor out the greatest common factor, and that will give us a common binomial factor. Let's do one. Okay, so we're going to factor 3x squared plus 14x plus 15. We start by multiplying our a and c. So 3 times 15 gives us 45. So now we're going to be looking for factors of 45. It's good to do this in a logical fashion where you start with 1 and work yourself up. So 1 times 45 would work. 3 times 15, or 5 and 9. Now we're going to look at the sum of these. We're looking for a sum that equals 14. Well, 1 plus 45 is 46. That won't work. 3 plus 15 is 18. That also does not work. But 5 plus 9 is 14. That's what I'm looking for. Now that we've found our correct factors, we're going to rewrite the original problem, except we're separating the 14x into 2 pieces. So 3x squared plus 5x plus 9x plus 15. Now we're going to group. Just going to pair the first 2 and the last 2 and pull out the greatest common factor of each. In that first set, our greatest common factor is just x. So factoring out an x gives us 3x plus 5 plus, in our next set, 9x plus 15, we can factor out a 3. So that gives us 3x plus 5. You'll notice now we have a common binomial. So we can factor out that binomial. So we have 3x plus 5 times x plus 3. And that is our factored form. The next method is called guess and check. Basically what we're doing here is undoing FOIL. So we're going to make some guesses, and then we're going to check our answer with FOIL to see if it's correct. Now we can have some logical ways to make our guesses. So we're going to start by looking if either our A or our C terms are prime, because that reduces the number of factors. So we can lock those in our first or last spots and know those are not going to change. Then we're going to want to look at the signs. So if our last term is positive, our signs of the 2 factors are going to be the same as the sign of B. If our last term, C, is negative, we're going to have one of each. Then we're going to try different factors. There are some tips that are going to help us guess. Now, one thing that we can look at is when we put them into our parentheses, we're going to look and see if there was a greatest common factor originally. If not, we can't have that in our pair. If we end up with the right middle term and we have the wrong sign, then we're just going to switch the signs of the factors. And then also you want to consider our middle term's size when placing the factors to think about if we're looking for a large middle term or a small. Then we're going to check this using FOIL. specifically the middle, the O and the I. So let's try 2x squared plus 19x plus 35. Now, one nice thing about this problem is that I notice that 2 is a prime number. So therefore, I know my first spots are going to be 2x and 1x. Then our factors are going to have the same sign because I have a positive 35 and a positive 19. So we're going to be adding them. Okay, so then I am listing out my factors of 35, the last term. Well, 35 can be 1 and 35 or 5 and 7. Now, there are some different combinations of how these can be placed in our FOIL. So we know our general form is going to look like 2x blank and 1x blank. I'm going to write down here because I'm kind of out of room. But so we could make this as 2x plus 1 and then 1x plus 35. Okay, now we're going to check using FOIL. Now we know our first and our last are going to work out. So what we're actually going to check is just the outside and the inner. So 2x plus 35, that's going to give me 70x. And then my inside gives me another 1x. Okay, that's going to give me an inside term of 71x. Well, I want 19x, so that's not going to be correct. And I can think about, even if I switch that, having a 35, I'm not going to end up with 19 in the middle. My numbers are going to be too big. So I'm going to cross out and say 1 and 35 is not going to work. So now we're going to try our next factor of 5 and 7. Okay, so we're going to put them in. So I have 2x plus, and then 1x plus. And then, here's where your guess and check comes in. I'm going to try to figure out where I want the 7 and where I want the 5. Okay, so I'm going to now FOIL, do my first. So my outside 2x times 5 gives me 10x plus, now I do my inner, 7 times 1x is 7x. Okay, that gives me 17x. I'm looking for 19x. I'm getting closer, but this did not work. So now let's try it using those same factors, but we're just going to switch the order of where I put the 7 and the 5. Okay, so in my last one, I tried the 7 first. Now I'm going to try the 5 first. So I'm going to put the 5 here, 2x plus 5, and 1x plus 7. Okay, so again, we're going to check. So my outside is going to be 2x times 7. That gives me 14x. And then my inner, 5 times 1x is 5x. Yes, that gives me 19x. That's the middle term I was looking for. So my factored form is 2x plus 5 times 1x plus 7. Let's do one more and try it in both methods. So I'm going to do 4x squared minus 4x minus 15. And we're going to start with guess and check. Now I start by looking at the 4 and the 15, and I notice that neither one of them is prime. So I'm not going to be able to know the first or the last factors right away. I notice that our factors are going to have different signs because I have minus 15. So basically what we are looking for is we are going to have to work on factors of 1 and 4 and 3 and 5. So we're going to have to guess for 2 spots. So I'm going to start using the factors of 4 as 1 and 4, And then the factors of 15 would be 3 and 5. Okay, so I'm just making my first guess. So 1x plus 3 and 4x plus 5. Okay, so I know the first is going to give me 4x squared, and the last is going to give me, oh, I need negative 15. So I'm going to have to make one of those negative. So let's make this a minus 5. And then I'm going to do the outer and inner to see if I'm going to end up with negative 4. So 1x and negative 5 is negative 5x plus 3 times 4 is 12x. Okay, this gives me negative 7x. Okay, so that's not correct. And I also don't have the right sign. So I know that it's not just my signs that were wrong. So we are going to have to try something else. So I think I'm going to now just flip the 3 and the 5. So if I take out the 3 and the 5, and let's just switch where they belong. So we're going to put the 5 first, and then the 3 here. Okay, so now when I FOIL, I'm going to end up with 1x times 3 is negative 3x plus my middle, 5 times 4, that's 20x. I'm going to get 17x. That's really big. Kind of feeling like that 4 gives me pretty big numbers. I'm going to guess that the 1 and 4 is not going to work. So let's try some different factors of the 4x squared. Well, we could do 2 and 2. Okay, so I'm going to have 2x in the first spot of each. I know one's going to be plus and one's going to be minus. I'm going to stick with the 3 and 5 for my factors of 15. The only other choice would be 1 and 15, and I don't think that's going to work. So I'm going to do plus 5 and minus 3. Okay, so then we're going to do our FOIL. So I'm doing the outside. 2x times negative 3 is negative 6x. And then my inner 5 times 2x gives me 10x. 6x plus 10x is 4x. Oh, wow, I want a negative 4x. So now I know I'm really close. So in other words, all I need to do is I just need to switch the signs. Okay, so instead of plus 5 and minus 3, I'm going to make this minus 5 and plus 3. Okay, so now if we check our outside, that gives me 6x minus 10x. Awesome, negative 4x. So my factored form is 2x minus 5 times 2x plus 3. Now that worked with guess and check. It took a little bit of time. Let's see what would have happened if we solved the same one using grouping. So in grouping, we're going to start by multiplying A and C. So AC is going to equal 4 times 15, which is going to be 60. I know that I'm going to need one positive and one negative since I have minus 15 at the end. But so we are looking at factors of 60. So we can list out our factors of 60. Okay, so I typed out all of my factors. And what I'm looking for is that if one of them was positive and one was negative, I'm looking for a difference of 4. I want my middle term to add together to equal negative 4. So that tells me that this would work. If I had negative 10 and positive 6, I would get a difference of 4. Okay, so we're going to use 6 and negative 10. And remember, now what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite the problem. And we're just going to separate our middle term into two things, plus 6 and minus 10. So I am looking for 4x squared plus 6x minus 10x minus 15. Now we factor by grouping. Our first pair, 4x squared plus 6x. Well, my greatest common factor there is 2x. So I'm going to factor a 2x out of both. 2x times 2x plus 3. And then in my second set, 10x minus 15. And really that minus there needs to go with the negative, with the 10. So I have negative 10x minus 15. So I can factor out negative 5. So negative 5 times 2x plus 3. Okay, so now I notice I have a common binomial. So I can take out that common binomial, 2x plus 3. And then I'm left with 2x minus 5. You'll notice that was the same answer we got above, just two different ways to do it. These will take some practice, but the more time you spend on them, the easier they'll get.